Good morning. My name is Ted Clouser, host of Win the Minute, Win the Day, the show that focuses on bringing hope to the chaos. Today, my guest is Jeff DeVerter. Jeff's journey to becoming Chief Technology Officer at Rackspace has been anything but typical. Originally, Jeff embarked on a career in music, but over the course of 20 years, he transitioned into technology and is now in the C-suite at Rackspace. Jeff rejoined Rackspace Technology as a Chief Technology Officer for Solutions in January 2020, having left the company after a decade with it to work for London-based Cloudreach. His first stint at Rackspace started when then CEO Taylor Rhodes, a close family friend, asked him for help guiding a Rackspace team on solutions for Microsoft's SharePoint. DeVerter had become well-versed on SharePoint, having previously moved to San Antonio to lead a team at USAA working with that software. In his first tenure at Rackspace, DeVerter eventually became Chief Technologist for Microsoft Technologies. Well, welcome to the show, Jeff. It's an honor to have you.
Ted, this is so much fun. Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. You did some good homework on figuring out the history there too.
Yes, sir, I did. That's one of the greatest parts of all this is getting to understand everybody's background.
Yeah, fun stuff. Well, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Let's just jump right in. What is your approach to personally waking up with a go win the day attitude?
I think it starts the day before. You know, when the day is starting to get to an end, I start to think about the next day and how it's going to kick off and what's going to happen. So I think having that mindset is really helpful. But for me, it's about getting up early. I like to get up early, get my exercise in, stay physically fit. I think it's super important. I spent as a man of faith, I like to spend some time in the Word. That helps to ground me as well. And usually there's something in there that's incredibly impactful for the day. I had an experience last week with that. I guess I could share because it's usually somewhat humbling. So I don't know what drew me into James, but I've been reading James lately. And my wife and I, our youngest just left for college a little bit ago, similar to you, empty nesting. So we're downsizing. It means there's a lot of chaos in our lives right now. And so I was running errands the other morning, trying to do too much at once, getting frustrated, was stuck behind trains with the internet people taking long. And the anger was coming up, but I just read, James 1. And in there, as I'm sitting there yelling at the car in front of me, the anger of men does not produce the righteousness of God. And I thought, oh, geez. All right. So with that, then it helped me to kind of recenter, refocus, confess and move on. And certainly does help with the day.
No doubt. And God always knows what words to bring to us to help raise our game.
Painfully at some points, but yes, and usually it's shining a light into a corner I'm not so thrilled about, but that's what he does best.
Absolutely. Well, you left Rackspace in March of 2018 after a decade of employment, only to come back in January of 2020. What prompted the decision to leave, and what prompted the decision to return?
Oh, good question. So yeah, I'd been there a good long time. And I would, as you mentioned earlier, I was brought in to help launch a SharePoint offering at Rackspace. It became Exchange. It became, OCS, Office Communication Server, then private cloud and public cloud offerings. And as you said, eventually CTO for the Microsoft offerings. But at the same time, what was happening inside of Rackspace is some interesting transformation. And, we were a private company when I first started, became a public company, went back to being a private company. And Rackspace was going through some real transformation years. And I really just felt like, I wasn't sure where my place was in the new organization. I like to build, I like to create things. And I didn't have that opportunity. And I got to know some of the guys over at Cloudreach. And so I had the opportunity to go over there and help build out what they were doing with Microsoft and with Azure. And that was great fun. But I'd been there just for a little bit, about a year and 10 months, about the time I got a phone call to come back. And, Rackspace had really transformed a lot in that time frame. And as I looked at the organization they wanted me to join and the leadership at the company, I was just really excited about where they had taken Rackspace and the energy they were bringing in and the future that was there, but also a strong respect for the heritage and the shoulders that the new leadership was standing on, and to have an opportunity to come and help companies undergo this type of digital transformation and to help set that direction. That's the kind of building I was excited about. So back to Rackspace I came. Gravity drew me in.
Was it just like you came right in with a running start, or did you have to do a little bit of rebuilding, or how did that work?
Well, I thought there'd be some rebuilding. In fact, I was really nervous going back for the interviews because I hadn't been back in the building since I'd left. And I was kind of sitting out in reception, sort of trying to find a corner. If you've ever been in the building, it's kind of round up there. So there are no corners. So I couldn't really hide. And so people just kept walking by going, "Hey, it's Jeff. Hey, it's Jeff. Didn't you leave?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but there's a little chance I might be coming back." And the week that I came back, the week after I came back was the big sales kickoff. And so, sales folks from all around the country had come in for this North American sales kickoff. And so all of a sudden I found myself with speaking things, and then somebody didn't show up and I had to go MC a whole part of that. And it was a really fun homecoming because there was some fun applause, and it was great to see a bunch of faces and get to meet some of the new folks.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you talked a little bit about faith, and that may be part of the answer, but how do you find time to keep up with being on the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company, which, for anybody that doesn't know, Rackspace is ranked 799th largest company, running a successful podcast and managing your personal life and doing them all exceptionally well?
Well, I love that you add the exceptionally well. At least that's like, we'll call that the face of it all. But it's you got to go into it humbly, because if you get into your head, that you're more than you are, or that any of it is really your own doing. Now, we bring our efforts to the table, and I certainly bring mine. But the challenge then is to not think that it's anything of my own doing. I just want to be faithful with the opportunities that are there, and faithful and prioritize what's important. I say that, God first, family second, everything else third. But we know, living in this world that we live in, that things ebb and flow. Sometimes that family really has a lot of needs and they pull you forward. Sometimes work gets kind of crazy and you've got to, spend more time there than you wouldn't normally. But you've got to really pay attention to it. I really have to pay attention to those seasons and ensure that I don't over pivot in any one direction. And really just try to make sure that balance stays there and that God stays in the center of it all. And to be grateful when successes come along, and be humble when I mess it up and admit that. And also be humble about the fact that it's, I put my efforts in, but it's certainly not the only person in the equation.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I just had lunch with someone yesterday, and we were talking about some similar things. And he mentioned that it seemed like I was humble, and I kind of chuckled a little bit because I struggle with that. I struggle with staying grounded, and as a man of faith, I know that God uses opportunities to help remind me to stay grounded. So it's a big part of it all.
It's hard, and a big part of that also kind of plays into how you keep that success moving, in my opinion. And it gets really easy, at least for me, when a success comes along, kind of try to take a lap and then the coast. And, while we always say we don't want to be defined by our failures, because especially as, being a man of faith, that there's new mercies every day. But I think there's also some challenges and maybe some sin in being defined by our successes and riding on that, as opposed to the opportunities that then show up. I'd like to be known by the success tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. I came back to Rackspace. I'm not one to print a lot of things out, but a friend had posted on Facebook this quote, and it said, it's a motivation, not a motivational speaker, a leadership coach had said, success isn't owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day. And that was helpful. You walk in and sit down at the desk the next day, whether it's here at the house or whether it's at an office, and just, all right, start fresh. You talk about winning the day. If I can end the day having accomplished something that moves that ball forward, that's a good day.
So true. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more about your journey. I mean, you're a man driven by faith, family, and then everything else. So just talk about that journey of how you got there.
Yeah, you called out the fact that this isn't career number one. Career one was in the music industry. I owned a recording studio in Houston, Texas, my wife and I, and that was really going to be the whole run, engineer and producer, all that sort of thing. And it was in the Christian music industry primarily, with some advertising and other stuff that was part of it. But really tried to keep keep God in that center, because, I believe that whether with whatever that relationship might be, whether it's a husband and wife, or, my relationship with work, if God is at that center and you think of it as a triangle and you just try to move closer to God, I get closer to the other things that matter as well. And so God obviously led me then out of music into technology, and that technology, role kind of kept moving and moving. Had kids along the way, and it really became, how do you balance all of that stuff? And that was the kind of that 20, 25, 30, 52-year-old, year history that I'm learning every day of how to do, because I'm a person also that believes that, and it's a bit of a flaw and it's a bit of a good thing, but anything worth doing is worth overdoing. I kind of use that as a joke when I talk about my hobbies or other areas, but I have that personality that I get excited about something, it consumes me.
Mhm.
And that can be good, and it can be really bad at times as well, because I'll take those things that should be third and put them in the first position. So keeping that balance, keeping that order in place, and understanding that, in all things there are seasons, and making sure the balance stays appropriate.
Well, and I think that just leads us perfectly into the next question, because you and I had a recent conversation and you had mentioned the concept of two words: be here.
Oh
So
yeah.
can you elaborate on that for me and tell me how that's going, since we talked about it a few weeks ago?
Yeah, so it first came to me when I came home from a particularly busy day. My kids were super young at the time, and Legos were one of the big games. And I don't even remember what we were doing. And I was really just stuck in whatever those challenges were of the day. And so then I was looking at my kids as we're sitting there playing on the floor, and I thought, they're not going to be here forever. They're not going to be this age forever. We're not going to be playing this game, whatever it was that we were doing. And so I had this thought. I had to think it was a divine, word into my life, and that was, just be here. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what happened before. Just be here. And I've taken that from, you take those rudimentary things of, playing Legos with kids, but even in work meetings, I have the opportunity. I can say I get, my schedule is so full, and I can be frustrated with that, but I have the opportunity to have a full schedule. And so I go meeting to meeting, and now, especially as we're remote for a lot of it, and especially when they're 30-minute back-to-back meetings, it can be frustrating. But I have the opportunity to work with people in each of those, and in some way, hopefully make their day a little bit easier, whether I'm, helping a salesperson represent who Rackspace is, whether I'm helping architects figure out the new product or product offerings. My day is different. Every meeting is different. But if I just try to focus to be in that meeting and to bring the best of what I have and try to push the badness away, then being there really, really helps. Now, you ask how it's going, moment by moment, it's different. But that's the challenge. And that's why I like that phrase. It's so simple. Just be in that meeting and enjoy the opportunity that I get to do it, because it is a blessing. And
Mhm.
then to bring whatever I have to the table, and be honest about, about what all I can do for those folks that I get to meet with.
And that's so important now, particularly as we all are facing the pandemic burnout,
Yeah.
to really look for those opportunities and recognize the blessings that we do have.
Yeah. And I go into these meetings, and we go in blind now. We at least used to go into conference rooms where you would see faces, and you would have that, and expressions and countenance. Are they hunched over? Are people up and excited? They have a cup of coffee in their hand, or and there was the chit chat before. There's no chit chat now. You just go into these meetings, you're dropped in blind for 30 minutes, and off you go to the next one. But to really try to pay attention, because all of those situations are fronted by and presented by and being solved by people. And
Mhm.
we talk about being men of faith, and you go back to what are the three things that are going to matter in the long term of eternity? God, His Word, and what else? People. So
That's
whatever
right.
the situation is a chance for us to help people, and so that's really where I try to stay focused as well.
Well, I mean, I just want to take a moment to commend Rackspace. I mean, I'm in the technology space, so I'm familiar with Rackspace, but to have an organization that allows you to speak like you do about faith says a lot. For an organization to be one that you want to go back to after you've left, it just says a lot about that organization. I know you must be very proud to represent them.
I really am. It's a pretty special place. I have the opportunity to know the founders, all the CEOs I've been friends with. Just a great heritage, a great group of people, and the future is pretty amazing for the company. It's an exciting time, one to be in tech, but to be a part of this organization. I'm very proud.
So true. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time together, Jeff. So you've gone through a day, you've had some wins, you've had some losses. How do you personally unwind after winning that day?
Okay, so the first thing I do is not think about tomorrow at the very tippy end of the day, because then the day doesn't end. You just roll right in. So you got to have a break. There's got to be a separation, and especially that we all work from home, or a lot of us do. Finding out how to have that separation as you go from one room to the other. There's no commute home. I'll also be transparent and tell you that I am a definite enjoyer of a craft beer. So that every now and again is not a bad thing. And for me, take the wins or whatever the losses might be. Don't let it define the evening, and don't carry it into my conversation with the wife. Used to say with family, but the kids have left, so now it's go in and how can I serve and pour into her life, or just enjoy each other now.
Yeah. So how's it going? It's been 2 or 3 weeks since you made that trip and dropped them off. Everything good?
It's going well. Talk about hard transformation. I tell you that I don't know how parents did it in the past, but to be able to FaceTime or have a chat or just a text throughout the day, it makes all the difference in the world. We just had Parents Weekend, so we were up in Nashville getting to see him then. It was a bummer for him, but we were pretty excited because one of his suite mates ended up coming down with COVID. He's fine, whatever. But, contact tracing, close proximity, he had to go quarantine. We just put him on the plane with us and brought him home for the week. So we did his school remotely. So we ended up not getting a long weekend, but getting a whole week with him, which was fantastic. So
there you go. Good. Well, you found a blessing out of a troublesome situation.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're extremely busy. Thank you for taking time to be with me today on the show and sharing your story.
My pleasure, Ted. Thanks so much. Getting to know you through the podcast. I mentioned this before, but when I stumbled across you on LinkedIn, but it was always so positive. And in this world of so much negative, I just want to commend you for how you encourage people to see the good, see the opportunity, and to go seize it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much, Jeff. And on that note, go win the day every day.